What happened when a wealthy diner pushed a young waitress too far at a high-end restaurant? The owner's unexpected intervention left everyone speechless. The evening rush at Hamilton's, an upscale restaurant in New York City, was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over polished wooden tables adorned with crisp white linens and perfectly arranged silverware. Waitstaff moved gracefully across the marble floors, balancing trays of elegantly plated dishes with precision. Amidst the hum of clinking glasses and soft conversation, a group of 3 women occupied the central table. At the head of the group sat Veronica Hayes, a woman who commanded attention with her presence. Veronica wasn't just wealthy, she radiated confidence and authority. Her diamond necklace shimmered with each movement, while a luxurious watch peeked out from the sleeve of her tailored blazer. Sipping her wine, she surveyed the room as if measuring it against her standards. To her, the world was built on hierarchies, and tonight she was undeniably perched at the very top. The atmosphere at Hamilton's grew more vibrant as the dinner service progressed, yet Veronica Hayes remained the unchallenged focal point of the room. Her laughter rang out, punctuated by her sharp observations and off-handed critiques. At a nearby table, Emily Carter, a young waitress working double shifts to save for college, darted through the maze of diners. Her steps were measured, but exhaustion showed in the subtle droop of her shoulders. Clutching a tray laden with entrees, Emily approached Veronica's table, her expression a mix of focus and nervousness. "Here you are, ladies," Emily said softly, setting the plates down one by one. Her voice was polite but tinged with hesitation. Veronica raised an eyebrow, her manicured fingers hovering above her glass of wine. She glanced at the steak in front of her, her lips curving into a faint, unimpressed smirk. "Excuse me," she said, her tone laced with disapproval. "Is this supposed to be medium rare? It looks closer to well done." Emily's cheeks flushed as she quickly replied, "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Let me have the kitchen fix that for you." Veronica leaned back, crossing her arms. "Fix it?" she echoed, her voice cutting through the hum of the dining room. "How about you just get it right the first time? Is that too much to ask?" The tension at the table rippled outward, drawing glances from nearby diners. Veronica's companions exchanged amused looks, clearly entertained by the unfolding drama. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the plate. "I'll have this redone immediately," she murmured, her voice almost breaking. As Emily turned to leave, Veronica scoffed loudly enough for the tables around her to hear. "Unbelievable," she said, shaking her head. "They'll hire anyone these days. If she can't handle carrying a plate, maybe she should try flipping burgers instead." Laughter erupted from her friends, their smirks echoing Veronica's disdain. The young waitress froze momentarily at the edge of the dining room, gripping the plate tightly as her face burned. Determined not to cry, Emily pushed through the kitchen doors, her composure unraveling with each step. At a corner table, a man in a sharp gray suit observed the scene with calm intensity. James Donovan, the restaurant's owner, was known for his unassuming presence. Tonight, he had chosen to dine quietly, blending into the crowd. But Veronica's behavior had caught his attention. His fingers tapped lightly on his glass as he considered his next move. Back at Veronica's table, the complaints continued. "Did you see how she walked?" Veronica asked, rolling her eyes, like she was on the verge of tripping over her own feet. One of her friends chuckled. "Well, she's certainly not cut out for this place." By now, other diners were visibly uncomfortable. A couple at a nearby table exchanged looks of disapproval, their whispered conversation marked by quick glances at Veronica. The tension in the room was palpable, but Veronica seemed oblivious, or perhaps she simply didn't care. Minutes later, Emily returned, carrying a new plate with trembling hands. "Here you are, ma'am," she said, her voice barely audible. "I hope this meets your expectations." Veronica inspected the dish with a dramatic pause before shrugging. "I suppose it'll do," she said dismissively. "But for heaven's sake, learn how to carry yourself. You're embarrassing this place." Emily forced a tight smile, nodding politely before retreating toward the kitchen. Her movements were brisk but deliberate, her head held slightly higher despite the tears she fought to suppress. The room seemed to hold its breath as James Donovan rose from his table, His movements were calm, his expression unreadable as he approached the restaurant manager near the bar. Their quiet exchange was brief but purposeful. Moments later, James made his way to Veronica's table, his steps measured and deliberate. "Good evening, ladies," he began, his voice calm but commanding. "I trust you've been enjoying your time at Hamilton's." Veronica tilted her head, her confident smirk returning. "Well, it's been interesting," she replied, her tone dripping with sarcasm. James smiled faintly, his gaze unwavering. "I've been observing your experience tonight," he said, "and I felt it was important to address a few things personally." Veronica's smile faltered slightly as the room fell silent. All eyes were on James as he prepared to deliver a lesson she, and everyone else in the restaurant, would never forget. The room grew eerily quiet as James Donovan stood at Veronica Hayes's table. The weight of his presence was palpable. Veronica, her polished demeanor beginning to falter, glanced at her friends for reassurance, but they avoided her gaze, sensing that the dynamic had shifted in a way none of them could control. James offered a polite smile, his voice calm but firm. "Ms. Hayes, I couldn't help but notice the way you've been addressing my staff tonight, particularly Emily. I felt it necessary to intervene." Veronica raised an eyebrow, her trademark smirk creeping back as she folded her arms. "Intervene?" she echoed. "I wasn't aware that voicing dissatisfaction with poor service was against the rules." James tilted his head slightly, his expression unchanging. "It's not dissatisfaction I take issue with," he said evenly. "It's the manner in which it's expressed. At Hamilton's, we hold our staff to high standards, but we also hold our guests to a standard of respect. Tonight, you've fallen short." Gasps rippled through the dining room. Veronica's confidence faltered as she sat up straighter, her cheeks beginning to flush. Her friends exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier amusement replaced by nervous fidgeting. "I don't see why this requires a public lecture," Veronica snapped, attempting to regain control of the situation. "I've simply been pointing out the obvious. If your staff can't handle feedback, that's hardly my fault." James remained unfazed, his gaze steady. "Feedback is one thing, Ms. Hayes. Humiliation is another. The way you've treated Emily tonight is unacceptable, and I won't tolerate it." Emily, standing quietly near the edge of the dining room, watched the exchange with wide eyes. Her hands were still trembling, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from the overwhelming mix of emotions James's words stirred in her. Veronica's smirk disappeared entirely, replaced by a tight-lipped expression of disbelief. "I think you're overreacting," she said, her voice defensive. "It was a minor issue blown out of proportion." James stepped closer, his voice dropping just enough to make the room lean in. "Minor to you, perhaps. But your words, Ms. Hayes, carry weight. They can wound, demean, and leave scars that take years to heal. And while you may think your status entitles you to speak as you please, let me assure you, it does not." The air was electric. Diners exchanged glances, some nodding in quiet agreement. Veronica, for the first time that evening, looked genuinely uncomfortable. Her carefully constructed facade of superiority was cracking under the weight of James's words. "As the owner of this establishment," James continued, "it is my responsibility to ensure that every person who walks through these doors, staff and guests alike, is treated with dignity and respect. You failed to do that tonight." Veronica's mouth opened as if to retort, but no words came out. The color drained from her face as James turned to Emily, his expression softening. "Emily," he said, his voice warm, "you've shown incredible professionalism and grace tonight. I want you to know how much I admire your strength. It's not easy to stand tall in the face of cruelty, but you did, and for that I am deeply proud." Emily blinked back tears, nodding slightly as a ripple of applause broke out among the diners. The sound was soft at first, but quickly grew, filling the room with an undeniable sense of solidarity. James turned back to Veronica, his tone measured but resolute. "As for you, Ms. Hayes, your behavior tonight does not align with the values of this establishment. I will not ask you to leave, but I will ask you to reflect. Actions have consequences and words have power." He gestured to the manager, who stepped forward with an envelope. The value of your meal tonight will be donated to a local organization that supports young women like Emily, women who work tirelessly to build a better future. Veronica's face burned with humiliation as she took the envelope, her hands shaking. Her friends sat frozen, too stunned to offer support. James addressed the room one final time. Let this serve as a reminder. Kindness costs nothing, but its absence can cost everything. Treat others with the respect they deserve, not for what they do, but for who they are. The applause swelled, echoing through the restaurant. Veronica, her bravado shattered, stood abruptly, muttering something about needing fresh air. Her friends quickly followed, their laughter and arrogance from earlier replaced by silence. As the doors closed behind them, Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. James approached her, his smile reassuring. "Take a moment," he said gently. "You've earned it." Emily nodded, her steps lighter as she headed toward the kitchen. The lesson James had delivered lingered in the air, a powerful reminder of the importance of kindness and the courage it takes to stand up for what is right. The applause lingered in the air, a palpable testament to the powerful moment that had just unfolded. Emily stood by the kitchen doors, still processing the unexpected turn of events. Her hands, which had trembled moments earlier, now felt steady. She glanced around the room, catching the nods and smiles of support from patrons who had witnessed her courage. For the first time that evening, she felt seen, not as a server but as a person deserving of respect. Meanwhile, James Donovan returned to his corner table, his expression calm yet contemplative. He wasn't one to seek the spotlight, but tonight had required his intervention. As he sipped his water, several diners approached him to express their admiration. One older gentleman stopped briefly, his voice low but earnest. "You don't see people stand up for what's right like that anymore. That was something special." James nodded, his response humble. "It wasn't about standing up," he replied. "It was about reminding everyone of the values we should all live by." Across the room, Veronica Hayes sat rigidly in her chair, her confidence shattered. Her friends avoided making eye contact with her or anyone else, their earlier amusement replaced by unease. Veronica toyed with the envelope James had handed her, her fingers nervously tracing its edges. The room that had once felt like her stage now seemed impossibly small, its walls closing in as whispers swirled around her. "I think we should go," one of her friends suggested tentatively, breaking the silence at their table. The others nodded in agreement, their voices barely above a whisper. Veronica hesitated, her pride warring with the undeniable truth that staying any longer would only prolong her humiliation. With a reluctant sigh, she pushed back her chair and rose to her feet. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath as she made her way to the exit, her once commanding stride reduced to an awkward shuffle. Her friends followed closely, offering muted reassurances that rang hollow in the wake of her public reckoning. As the heavy doors of Hamilton's closed behind them, the energy in the room shifted. Conversations resumed, though the topics were no longer about food or decor. Diners spoke in hushed tones about the lesson they had just witnessed, a shared sense of awe and reflection evident in their words. Emily returned to the floor with a renewed sense of purpose. Her steps were lighter, her posture straighter, and her smile more genuine than it had been all evening. Patrons greeted her warmly, some even offering words of encouragement as she passed their tables. "You handled yourself beautifully tonight," one woman said, reaching out to touch Emily's arm. "Not everyone could have done what you did." Emily smiled softly, her voice steady as she replied, "Thank you. I just tried to stay professional." At the bar, the restaurant manager approached James, his expression one of quiet admiration. "That was a masterclass in handling a difficult situation," he said. James shrugged modestly. "It wasn't about me," he replied. "It was about Emily, and reminding people that kindness and respect are non-negotiable." The night continued, but the impact of what had transpired lingered. Diners left larger tips than usual, and many exchanged kind words with the staff as they departed. A few even stopped by James's table to thank him personally for setting an example. As the final guests trickled out, James noticed Emily standing near the bar, talking quietly with the other staff. Her laughter, light and genuine, was a stark contrast to the tense demeanor she'd carried earlier in the evening. James approached her, his expression warm. "Emily," he said, "I hope you know how proud I am of you. The way you handled yourself tonight was remarkable." Emily looked up at him, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Donovan. I don't know what I would have done without your support." James smiled. "You didn't need me. You already had everything it took to stand tall. Sometimes we just need a reminder of our own strength." As the staff began closing the restaurant for the night, James stood by the window, watching the quiet street outside. He spotted Veronica and her friends lingering near the curb, their postures subdued, their animated chatter replaced by introspection. For a moment, Veronica glanced back toward the restaurant, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and walked away, her steps slower than before. Inside, the warmth of the restaurant remained, not from the chandeliers but from the collective understanding of everyone who had witnessed the evening's events. It wasn't just about a lesson learned. It was about the reminder that dignity, respect, and kindness are the true markers of character. The night at Hamilton's slowly wound down. The once bustling restaurant was now quieter, the chatter of diners replaced by the soft clinking of glasses being cleared away. Emily Carter stood near the bar, her apron folded neatly over her arm, chatting with a fellow server. Her laughter was light, her earlier anxiety replaced by a newfound confidence. She still couldn't fully grasp what had happened that evening, but one thing was clear. She had been seen, supported, and respected. Across the room, James Donovan stood by the large front window, his hands in his pockets, gazing out at the quiet New York street. He watched as Veronica Hayes and her friends lingered near the curb, their animated energy from earlier now subdued. Veronica, who had once commanded the room with her presence, seemed smaller, her posture less assured. She glanced back at the restaurant one final time before walking away, her steps slow and deliberate. James turned back to the restaurant, surveying the space with a sense of quiet pride. The evening had been a testament to the culture he had worked so hard to build at Hamilton's, a culture where kindness, respect, and dignity were non-negotiable values. The lesson delivered to Veronica was not just for her. It was for everyone who had witnessed it. As the staff began their closing routine, James approached Emily, who was wiping down a table near the kitchen. She looked up, her face lighting up with a warm, grateful smile. "Emily," James said, his tone gentle. "How are you holding up?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. "I'm okay," she said. "Better, actually. I never thought anyone would stand up for me like that." James smiled faintly. "You stood up for yourself first, Emily. You carried yourself with grace, even when it wasn't easy. That's what people saw tonight." Emily's cheeks flushed slightly, but her smile grew. "Thank you, Mr. Donovan. It means a lot." "Good," James replied. "And just so you know, the donation in Veronica's name has already been processed. It's going to the Women's Empowerment Initiative downtown. They support young women working toward their futures, women like you." Emily's eyes widened. "That's incredible." "Thank you. It's the least I could do," James said. "You reminded everyone tonight of something important, that kindness is the strongest response to cruelty." As the staff finished their tasks and began to trickle out for the night, James gathered everyone together near the bar. His voice carried a calm authority as he addressed them. "I want to thank all of you for your hard work tonight," he said. "But more importantly, I want you to remember this. What we do here isn't just about serving food. It's about creating a space where everyone, staff and guests alike, feels valued and respected. Tonight wasn't easy, but it was a reminder of why we hold ourselves to a higher standard." The staff nodded, their expressions a mix of pride and gratitude. Emily stood among them, feeling a part of something greater than herself. As the team dispersed, James noticed an older couple lingering by the door. They approached him, their faces kind but serious. "Mr. Donovan," the woman began, "we just wanted to say thank you. What you did tonight, it was inspiring. You reminded all of us of something we sometimes forget." Her husband nodded. "The world could use more people like you." James shook their hands, his humility evident. "Thank you for saying that. I just did what I felt was right." As they left, James returned to the window, the reflection of the restaurant's warm lights blending with the dark street outside. The night felt heavier than most, but in a good way, a weight of significance, of change. Emily, now ready to leave, approached him quietly. "Good night, Mr. Donovan," she said. "Good night, Emily," he replied, his tone soft but steady. "And remember, your work here matters, but so do you." Emily nodded, her heart full as she stepped out into the crisp night air. James remained by the window, watching her disappear into the city. He thought of Veronica and the ripple effects of the evening's events. Would she change? Would she carry this lesson forward? Only time would tell. What James knew for certain was this: every small act of kindness, every stand taken for respect and dignity, had the power to shape a better world. And as the lights dimmed at Hamilton's, he was content knowing that tonight had left a lasting impression, not just on one person, but on everyone who had been there to witness it. As the lights dimmed at Hamilton's, the lesson of the evening lingered like an echo. Emily Carter stepped into the crisp New York night, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. Inside, James Donovan remained by the window, watching her figure disappear down the street. He couldn't help but reflect on the profound impact of small but meaningful actions. The staff, once frazzled by the evening's chaos, now moved with a quiet pride, buoyed by James's words and Emily's strength. The older couple who had thanked James earlier left larger than usual tips, their smiles warm and encouraging. Even diners who had merely observed the event seemed changed, their whispered conversations reflecting on respect, kindness, and accountability. The message was clear. At Hamilton's, dignity mattered more than status. James smiled faintly, content knowing that tonight's events would inspire more than just fleeting change. It would ripple outward in ways he might never see. In 2025, this story serves as a powerful reminder of the enduring importance of respect and kindness in a fast-paced, often disconnected world. It shows us that wealth or status does not exempt anyone from the responsibility to treat others with dignity. The ripple effect of small acts of empathy, like standing up for someone or fostering an environment of mutual respect, has the potential to inspire widespread change. As workplaces and communities grow more diverse, the lesson from Hamilton's is clear. Kindness costs nothing, but its impact is invaluable, shaping a more compassionate and equitable society for all. Let's stand with Emily and support individuals like her who show resilience and grace under pressure. Share your thoughts in the comments. How did this story inspire you? What would you have done in her shoes? Let's celebrate the power of kindness by uplifting those who work hard behind the scenes. For Emily, the next step is clear. Embrace her strength, continue pursuing her dreams, and remember she's capable of greatness. If you've ever been moved by moments of unexpected support, share this story to remind others that standing up for dignity can inspire change far beyond the moment.